It was not very often that I was able to spend the night with my grandparents when I was a kid. You see, they lived in a secondhand, small Airstream trailer on a campground in Virginia. When I say small, I mean they had very little space for anyone to sleep over. If they had overnight guests, that meant that they lowered their kitchen table, and that became the twin bed. When I was about 10, my sister and I were invited to spend the night, and we were very excited about this. About a day into our trip, we were outside in the middle of summer. We complained that we were hot, we were bored, and there was nothing good to eat. My grandmother took my hand and took me inside the camper. She opened the refrigerator and took out a small handful of apples. She pulled out some flour, some sugar, some cinnamon, and a few other ingredients that I don't really remember. Within a few minutes, she had peeled and cored the apples, had wrapped the apples in a dough, and placed them on a small cookie sheet. She slipped them into an oven, a very small oven, think easy bake, and began to cook. Within a few minutes, the camper began to smell like cinnamon and apples. A few more minutes later, she took them out of the oven, and they were the most beautiful golden brown apple dumplings that I had ever had. From that afternoon, I remember two things. One, my grandma makes a mean apple dumpling. And two, my grandmother could make something out of nothing. As a child, that was magic. What I did not know that I knew and I learned as an adult was that my grandparents lived in this secondhand trailer, not because they were on a grand adventure, but because they had no other viable housing options. My grandparents lived in poverty. My grandmother had lived in poverty her entire life. She was the second oldest of 8 children. When her older brother Earl passed away suddenly, they were living on a rural farm in Appalachian, West Virginia. She had a father that did not value education, and with the death of her older brother, extra hands were needed on the farm. So he took my grandmother out of class at the 3rd grade. She did not finish the 4th grade. My grandmother entered her adulthood functionally illiterate, married young, and raised a family of her own who lived in poverty throughout their childhood. None of my grandmother's children would graduate from high school. All would enter adulthood, marrying young and managing poverty on their own terms throughout their life. My mother would marry at 17, start a family, would not complete her degree, but eventually did get her GED many years later after having a family of her own. At the time of my grandmother's death, she had buried an infant son, an adult son, a husband of 45 years, and her independence from a catastrophic stroke that took the use of her dominant arm that she had lived with for 15 years. Despite all the adversity that she faced, despite all of the heartache, all the challenges that she lived through, my grandmother was one of the most beautiful people I knew, inside and out. She was gentle, she was kind with her words, she was patient, she was wise beyond any of her education which would show. My mom used to tell me that my grandma made poor bearable. She had this unique skill of rising above her circumstances and taking everybody with her where she went. I used to think of my grandma as being a tough old lady. What I realize now was that she was far more than tough or hardy or gritty. She was resilient. Resilience has been studied for decades. It's understood to be the process of experiencing adversity, finding meaning in that adversity, and then applying that meaning to a new situation. Basically, you grow from your struggle. It's been studied for decades. It has been considered a continuum, a cycle, a process, a trait, and now more recently a skill. We know through research that resilience can be bolstered and supported with intentional practice. The other thing we know about resilience now is that when you look at a population of resilient people, the common factor they share is that they all report having a champion, a cheerleader, a role model that was consistently available to them throughout their life. I have been blessed by having so many people love me well. But if I am honest, my very favorite cheerleader, my favorite champion, and my best role model was my grandma. Like my mother, I would marry at 17, I would leave home, I would graduate early, and I would enroll in community college. And it's at that point our family history changed. I was the first person on either side of my family to attend college. Within the first semester of college, I found out that I was pregnant and realized very quickly that my ability to continue into college was going to stop. I did not have the resources to continue to go to class and raise a baby. It was at that time that I really trusted the role model of my grandmother, of doing something really hard, even when you couldn't see the next steps in front of you. I learned through her role model to take a deep breath and to walk forward, to apply lessons and be stronger because of them. About a year later, I found myself as a single mom with an 8-week-old baby, which was not the plan. I had no money, very few resources. I had unstable housing, and I had no education. Reasonably so, I was in a panic. I didn't know what to do, so I went back where I started. I went to the same community college that I left a year before. I met with an academic advisor, explained the situation I found myself in, and told her, I don't have 4 years to get my life together. I have maybe 2. She listened kindly and knowingly smiled, and she said, Tracy, I think you need to go to nursing school. And I blinked really hard. I believe I laughed a little bit, and I said, that is a really bad idea. I spent most of my childhood being known in my doctor's office for the kid that passed out or threw up every time you got near them with a needle. Never in my life did I think nursing was a good idea. And the more she talked and the more I tried to give her some other options, she convinced me that this was the way that I would have a consistent income and a career, that I would never feel the fear I felt in that moment again. So I filled out the applications. I signed all of the forms I needed to sign. I completed my FAFSA because we know we all have to do that every year. I wrapped up that office visit, picked up this 8-week-old baby, and carried her to my car, a 1982 Ford Escort that burned more oil than it did gas, clicked her in her car seat, and sat behind the steering wheel, and I cried. And then I cried some more. And then I did what every good daughter should do. I called my mom. And I shared with her what I had just decided, that I was going to nursing school, convinced that she would say, give me another idea, suggest a better alternative, talk some sense into me. And she did not. She did what I believe a good mother does, and that was to say, you've got this. Whatever lies in front of you, you can handle. I think now about the fact that I could handle it because the women before me had handled other things more difficult, more challenging. I had footprints to follow. So I ended that conversation. I had to get my life together, figure out some resources. That was a very humbling experience for me. I had to rely on financial aid, Pell Grants, scholarships. I had to go to social services and apply for welfare support, something that I had never experienced. It was such a humbling experience for me, but I grew so much in those years. If I'm honest, I was unprepared for nursing school. I had no idea how much time I was going to spend studying again, practicing technical skills, and commuting back and forth from all of my clinical sites. And then the time of raising a baby on my own and being young and not having a lot of life experience or even life skills. But with a lot of support and a lot of love, I persisted. I took one day at a time, and I got through. 2.5 years, I walked across the stage at a community college graduation with my associate degree in nursing. I looked out onto the lawn, and I saw my almost 2.5-year-old daughter spinning in her pink dress, oblivious to the ceremony around her, just thrilled that she had a new dress and family was there. I also looked out into the audience, and I saw my mom. who was smiling, a look of pride on her face. And the other look that I saw very clearly was relief. She and I shared in that moment a reality that my life was changing, and it was changing in so many ways that in that moment I could not fully appreciate. In 2 generations, my graduation changed our family history of functional illiteracy and poverty into financial security and an educational future that valued it deeply. It was amazing what happened that day. I once heard a comedian talk about the difference between a 4-year university graduate and a community college graduate. If you ask someone that went to a 4-year university and you say, "Where'd you go?" They tell you, they just say the school. They say Upstate or Furman or Clemson. You ask somebody that went to a community college, you get a story. And it often starts with, I took some classes, and then I took some time off, and then my car broke down, and then I got married, and then I got a new job, but then I took some more classes. And for some of us, that cycle is a short one. We come back once or twice and we graduate. Sometimes it's 7, 8, 9, 10. These are my people. These are the people that try so hard to be dedicated and passionate, and no matter what they face, they come back and they keep coming back, chasing a goal to make a better life for themselves and a better life for the people that love them. Those are the people that I relate to most closely. I have 4 college degrees. All of them are in nursing, and I am very proud of those. But I am most proud of my associate degree in nursing. It was the degree that grew me the most and changed my life. My grandmother passed away before I got to wear my doctoral regalia. I truly pray that she is proud of me. But even more so, I pray that I am living a life that honors her memory and continues her legacy.